Welcome back to a new video on this channel, and on this occasion is the Arturia PROPHET 5. Everything on this guide is in chapters, so if you look at the description or the timeline, you can jump to a section or skip the ones you don't want. If you like this, please like and subscribe, and this channel is supported by viewers only. If you want to buy me a coffee to say thanks, you can. Go to the links at the description. You have links for PayPal, YouTube Thanks, and Patreon. So it makes sense that we start with the oscillators, the thing that makes sounds. First, I'm going to be starting with a default patch. So if you go right here at the top, you're going to find a lot of examples, right? The leads, for example. And if you go here, you can see at the beginning of some patches that you have a number. These are the presets that you got in the original unit. Now, in our case, I'm going to go to template and always start from a default. It gives us the init type of preset. You get two oscillators. The one is very basic and the two is a bit more complex. Before using the oscillators, you need to match them in the mixer section. And this is the volume. If I go all the way down, it's like turning the oscillator off, right? This is matches the volume. If I go all the way up on the oscillator 2, we get the number 2. And if I go all the way down and go up, we get a noise generator. In this case, I'm going to go only up on the oscillator number 1. Now, oscillator 1 gives you two shapes. You get the saw, and then you turn it off, and you go to the next one, and you have a square. Since this is an analog emulation, the shapes are not perfect. For example, the square shape, it's not highly symmetric. If I go to higher, it's not super symmetric, and that's fine because it's an analog emulation, and this is how it sounds and how it looks. You can turn them both at the same time, and what you get is a combination of the square and the saw, right? Okay, in this case, I'm just going to stand on the saw, and what you can do in this is you can change by semitones. You can go all the way down to 24 semitones or all the way up to 36 semitones. If you want to go back to defaults, you can double click on the actual knob and it will go back to the center. You just don't need to drag all the way up. Another thing that you can do when you're standing on the pulse, you can change the pulse width. By default, it's going to be like that, but if I move it, it's going to change the width and make it super narrow. And if you go way too much, right, it's going to be almost nothing, right? And if I go all the way down, we are back to the other side. And just by moving this control, we can do pulse width modulation. That's the whole point. And again, if you double click it, you're going to go back to the default position. On the oscillator number 1, you have one more option, which is going to be the sync. Now, this one is the hard sync that you get on most analog vintage synthesizers. But in this case, before we discuss this, we need to discuss the oscillator number 2 because this section works along with the oscillator number 2. I'm going to go all the way down on the number 1, and I'm going to go all the way up, almost all the way up on the oscillator number 2. Now, the number 2 is a little bit more complex. We can do different shapes, like it's the same saw that we have right here at the top, but we can also do a triangle and we can also do a pulse. And this works the same way. If you're working with a pulse, we can adjust the pulse width just like we did with the oscillator number 1. But on top of that, since you can do combinations right here on the 1, you can do combinations on the 2. So if I'm doing a square, I can do a triangle, and I can do even a saw. Or maybe a saw and a triangle, or maybe, again, a saw and the square, just like we have right here at the top. In terms of pitch, you can do a little bit more. You still have your frequency control, which is you can go, again, all the way down to 24 semitones or all the way up to 36 semitones, but you also have the fine control, which means that you can go in cents. Now, if I double click it, notice that it's going to go to the center. But when you load a default patch, and I'm going to load it right now, the default value is going to be 0.110 cents. This is the default position for the main preset from the init preset, which is not 0. And this is because when you are using both oscillators, the cents, what it will do, it will separate the oscillator number 2 from the number 1 just a tiny little bit. If I do double click, they're right in the center and we get a phasey sound. So you can use the fine to separate the oscillators a little bit or maybe a little bit too much. But it's, again, completely up to you. At the right side of the oscillator number 2, you have two more options. You have the keyboard and the low frequency. So when you enable this, it means that it's going to turn this oscillator into low frequency mode. It turns it into an LFO. So if I play it, we hear a click. This is how an LFO works. Now we're going to talk a little bit more about this because this belongs to the modulation section. We enable it from here. So again, we're going to talk about this later. But if you go to the next one, you have the keyboard. And this one is super useful. If I'm playing a key, right? Every time I play a new key, it's recognizing which key I'm playing. So the frequency that we hear is the pitch, right? So the keyboard, what it does, it will disconnect if we turn it off. It will disconnect the keys from the actual oscillator or synthesizer. So the oscillator now, it's not listening to the keys or what we are playing anymore. Every time we play a key, it will play. But if I play different keys, it doesn't care. It's playing a fixed frequency. What's the point of this? Well, if I'm playing a key, I can move it around and select a very specific frequency, and every time we play, it's gonna be stuck on that frequency. So I could go maybe to the oscillator number 1 and just play something and adjust it. And now every time I play something, the oscillator number 2 is stuck to the same frequency, while the oscillator number 1 is just following my keyboard. If I go to Unison, it's gonna sound a little bit better. Notice that we have a low frequency in the background the whole time that it's not moving. If you think about this, it's like bagpipes. We have a fundamental note in the background, and then at the top, we play something else. Just to finish with the oscillator section, we have this sync. And if you hover on that sync, at the bottom, it's going to say when active, oscillator 1 is hard synced to the frequency of the oscillator 2. This means that the 1 is the slave and the 2 is the master. So the oscillator 1 now is going to be in sync with the oscillator 2. It's going to follow whatever the oscillator 2 does. So if I go down on the oscillator 2, we are not getting it. I'm just listening to the oscillator 1. If I play a key, and I move the frequency of the oscillator 2, this one needs to be in sync with whatever is that we do right here. So it cannot do whatever it wants. So when I move the 2, oh, I need to enable, of course. Notice that now the pitch, the frequency of the oscillator 1 is changing, but I'm moving the oscillator 2. So this is how sync works. The 1 is going to be in sync with the oscillator 2. Now the trick right here is that when you move the frequency of the one that it's being in sync, the one that it's hard synced, you get sounds like, the hard sync type of sound. And you need to do some kind of modulation to get the full effect. Now we could do this, we can automate this with something else. We still need to cover the modulation section, but I could maybe enable Unison just to get something a little bit, nicer. I'm gonna go down volume because it's gonna be very loud. And what I want to do, I want to modulate with this envelope, the filter envelope, and I want to provide a little bit of a tag and a little bit of decay. So now I'm gonna be modulating this with this envelope, right? I'm gonna be modulating the frequency with this envelope. So now when I play it, we get that sound. Now I can go. Now first I need to enable frequency 1, so we are modulating this one. Again, we're going to talk about this more in detail. But now if I play something, that envelope is modulating the frequency and we get that hard sync sound. Maybe if I do a little bit less. And you can on top, of course, go to the oscillator number 2 and have some sound at the top. And when I move the semitones, the frequency of the 2, it will alter the number 1. Alright, so that's how the sync works. We are done with the oscillator section, and I guess now it's time to move forward and discuss the filter. I'm back to a default preset. Now this is a subtractive synth. We generate some sound with the oscillators, and then we go through the filters, and the filters will remove the parts that we don't want. This cutoff is the one in charge of cutting frequencies. Now this cutoff is 24 dBs per octave. It's pretty aggressive, so if I go all the way up and I play something, we are not cutting anything. You can see it right here on the spectrum. If I start chopping, we can see that we are removing almost halfway, and we are removing a lot of high frequencies. If you keep going down, you're going to be removing more and more and more. Right, so then you have your resonance, and the resonance is a bump at the breakpoint. So if I'm cutting almost maybe there, we can see that the curve is right here. So when I go up in resonance, the lower frequencies, this is how this filter works, there it's gonna go down the lower frequencies, but we get a bump right here at the breakpoint. As we keep going up, it's gonna get more resonant. At one point, it's gonna self-oscillate. And this is normal for some synthesizers. Some other synthesizers with different filters cannot do this. But this one can. So if I play different keys, we can get that tone that we get with the resonant filter. If we move the cutoff, we get that effect, the classic effect. Alright, so this is how the cutoff and the resonance works. I'm going to go all the way down on the resonance. Coming up next is going to be the EMV amount. So this is about modulation. We use an envelope, attack, decay, sustain, and release to modulate the cutoff. This is all about the cutoff. So if I'm playing here, this envelope will instruct in how this cutoff needs to move every time I play a key, right? So if I'm doing 0 all the way down to 0, this envelope, it's not influencing the cutoff, right? Nothing happens. It's not moving. If I use all the amount, notice that now we get a different result. The thing is, I'm using too much. Maybe if I do just a tiny little bit, now we get a little bit of modulation of the cutoff. And all of this, of course, is tied to the ADSR. If I do a little bit of attack, if I go slow, when I play a key, it's going to slowly go up, and at some point, it's going to slowly go down. Now, if you don't know how an ADSR works, don't worry. I'm going to give you an envelopes 101 in a minute. I'm going to go back to defaults on the envelope amount, and now I'm going to go all the way down on the envelope amount. When you talk about this key BT, so this is the keyboard follow, or sometimes it's called keyboard control. Now, this what it does is going to modify how the filter, how the cutoff works. And if I turn it off, and maybe I go here, let me just set it up. I'm going to do a little bit of resonance so we can see maybe the peak. We can see that we have that peak right here. So if I play higher keys, since we are doing a lot of cutoff, we cannot hear the higher frequencies, and I'm playing a higher key. And if I keep going down, notice that the peak, it's pretty much at the same point. This peak right here is not moving. It makes sense. The cutoff is at this position. We are not cutting less, we are not cutting more. It's always right there. So the keyboard, what it does is going to listen to the keys that we play. And the keys that we play, they have a frequency. So the keyboard will move and adjust the cutoff so we can hear those high frequencies and low frequencies. So it's going to adjust the cutoff to our keys. So now, if I do the same thing with the keyboard on, if I play a higher key, notice that the breakpoint is on a different spot. It's right here. If I keep going down, the resonant peak or the cutoff is going to move down following our keys. And what it does, it makes possible for us to play a low key and then play higher keys and hear them. If I turn this off, now the higher keys are going to be super dark. Right? So all of this depends on what you want to do, what type of sound you want to do. If maybe you're doing some bass, well, maybe the keyboard control is not going to help you, right? It depends on the bass. But if you're doing some keys, maybe you want the keyboard control because you want to hear the higher keys. All right? So, okay, so that's the keyboard control. Now, something else that doesn't belong to the filters. Right here, you have a master tune. It's 440 by default. You can detune it all the way up or all the way down. Of course, this is a very, very small amount. And then you have your main volume. Okay, so I'm back to a default patch, and I'm going to give you an envelopes 101. Because maybe this is your first synthesizer, and you don't know how an ADSR works. So yeah, I'm going to give you a 101 right now. If you already know how an ADSR works, you can move on. I'm not going to teach you anything new. I'm going to be using the amplifier section. The amplifier section, what it does is going to control how the volume comes out. Behind the scenes, especially on an analog synthesizer, the oscillators are constantly running, right? They don't stop. They're always running. So the amplifier, this envelope, is listening to when we play a key, And the ADSR, the envelope, will decide how the volume goes out. If I go all the way down, this knob's going to go all the way down, all the way down. Now if I play a key, notice that we get almost nothing. We get a tiny little blip. Right? So the amplifier is in charge to control how the sound comes out. If everything's super short, we get almost nothing. Now, the attack and the decay are time-based knobs. They are time-based controls. The sustain is going to be a level, and then the release, it's just like the attack and the decay is a time-based knob. Now, if I play a key, what I want to do, I want to hear something. So you need to go to the attack. The attack is going to decide how the sound will start and how it will go up to full amplitude. If I do a slow attack and I play something, and this is, super slow, can go really slow. So I'm going to do something about maybe in the 1 second. I'm going to play a key in 3, 2, 1, and I need you to see the spectrum. I'm going to play it. Notice how the sound goes up. I'm going to maybe do it slower. The sound slowly goes up until it reaches maximum point, the maximum amplitude, and then dies. But notice that I'm still holding a key. You can see it right here. I'm still holding it. So the attack decides how the volume goes up, how slowly goes up, and then it's going to die. Now, how it's going to die, it depends on the decay. How the sound is going to decay when it reaches maximum point. So we need to go to the decay and provide some value. So now, if I play the key again in 3, 2, 1, the sound goes up, reaches maximum point, and then it's going to slowly decay. But I'm still holding the key, all right? So I'm going to play it again. Sound goes up to the attack, then moves on to the decay, and it's going to decay down very slowly. Since I'm still holding a key, what's going to decide if we don't want to go all the way down when we are holding a key is going to be the sustain. Now, the sustain is not time-based, right? All of the attack and the decay, they depend on time. Is how much time it's going to take to go up and how much time it's going to take to go down. The sustain is just a level. If I move the sustain, we are pretty much saying that when the decay is over, the sound is going to get stuck right here if I'm holding a key. So if I do the same thing and we go down on the sustain, the sound is going to go up, it's going to go down on the decay, and then it's going to get stuck on the sustain level. I'm going to play it in 3, 2, 1. Sound goes up, goes down to the decay, and then it gets stuck because it's meeting the level of the sustain. One thing that you need to know is that if you go all the way up on the sustain, it's going to bypass the decay stage because there's no decay. It's sustaining all the way up, always. So it's not gonna decay. But if you provide less values, you have the same trick. Goes up, goes down to the decay, and then gets stuck on the sustain. Only when you're holding the keys. Now, if I release the key, it's gonna die, the sound dies. How the sound dies when you release the key is going to be the release, right? That's why it's called released. So if I play a key, we know that the sound dies. If I provide some amount right here, maybe something like, 1 second, I'm gonna play the key. It's gonna go to the decay, get stuck on the sustain, and I'm gonna release it in 3, 2, 1, and the sound will smoothly die. I'm gonna make it longer and just more obvious. Gonna go up, go down, sustains, release it in 3, 2, 1, and the sound is gonna take a little bit of time in dying. Now, this is doing it like this because I'm also using the envelope amount. I maybe should be going all the way down and not use this. Let me adjust the cutoff. It's going up, it's going down. And now if I release the keys, it's just slowly, and I'm not playing anything, it slowly go down in amplitude. So this is how the release works. If you want, of course, faster release, you need to adjust it. Now, when you're playing or creating sounds, it all depends on your envelope. If you want a sharp attack, you need to go all the way down, maybe just a little bit of attack, and how it's going to decay. If you want a plucky sound, if you want no sustain, it's going to be more plucky. If you're creating maybe some keys, you will need to provide a little bit of release. If not, all the keys will die instantly. For example, if I go all the way down, Every time I tap or play a key, it's going to die. If I go up on the release, it's going to take a little bit more. Now, if I keep going up, right? All the different voices of the synthesizer, they have a longer release. So we get this, keys type of synth keys type of effect. I'm going to go back to a default preset, and right here, the ADSR for the filter works exactly the same way. Just to show you, I'm going to do no attack, no decay, all the way up so we can disregard the decay and a little bit of release on the amp. And on the filter, I'm going to be doing pretty much the same, but in this case, I'm going to go sustain all the way up and release all the way down. If we are using this envelope with the envelope mount, we are doing some modulation to the cutoff. So if I play it, notice that we do get something. It's because of this decay. If I want a slow modulation of this cutoff, it's going to start very slowly, and we get that wow. And then it is going down, right? Even if I'm holding the keys. If I want it to go faster, it's going to be faster. If I want it to be slower, it's going to go down super slow. If you want some release, it's going to decide how after the decay stage, when you release the keys, is going to die. It works pretty much the same way. And if you want some sustain, it's going to go down, but it will not go down completely. It's going to get stuck right there. All right, so hopefully all this, this 101 was useful for you. Again, maybe this is your first synthesizer. And yeah, controlling ADSR is something fundamental for any synthesizer. The modulation section is very interesting with this synthesizer. You have a main LFO right here in the middle, LFO, and then you have something that says wheel mod and then something that says polymod. I'm going to leave the polymod out, and I'm again starting from a default patch. The LFO, I'm going to show you in a minute, but it works just like an LFO, and you don't have an on and off switch, so it's constantly going. How this works is that you need to enable the modulation with your mod wheel. That's why it says wheel and then it says mod. And right here in this knob, it says LFO or noise. So you can use this LFO as a modulation source, or you can use noise, or you can use a combination. I'm going to show you in a minute. I'm going to go all the way to LFO. So I'm using this LFO to do a modulation, and I'm going to turn everything off. How this works is that you need to select the source, which is going to be the LFO or noise, and then you need to decide what are you going to be modulating. And this is the destination. You're going to be modulating the frequency of the number 1 or the number 2 or the pulse width modulation, the pulse width, or you can modulate the cutoff, this control, right? You can move it up or down. So, okay, so I'm going to be going to LFO. I'm not going to touch the LFO, but I'm going to go to frequency number 1. The oscillator 1 is all the way up, so if I play it, we can hear it. Now, if I play it, we get no modulation, right? So we need to do some mod. We need to move the mod wheel in order to get it. I'm going to be cutting a little bit more frequencies, and I'm going to be doing a little bit of resonance so we can hear that peak. Now, the rate of the LFO will decide how slow or how fast you go. But yeah, right now it's doing pitch modulation. If I wanted to do pitch modulation for the 1 and the 2, if I get the 2, now both are being modulated. Another thing that you can do is maybe just modulate one, and the other one is going to stay at the same spot. It's not being modulated, just the number 2. And if you do sync, this is going to get you a cool sound, because remember that the 1 listens to the 2. Since I'm modulating 2, is affecting the number 1. Another thing that you can do, for example, pulse width modulation. If I'm using just the number 1 and I'm standing on a pulse, if I play it, we can see that pulse width modulation. If you want less, you can go down on the mod and you're going to get less. You can do the 2, pulse width modulation 2 is the same way, works the same way. And the little thing that you can do is the filter. So now I'm doing filter modulation. Maybe if it's too aggressive, you can go down. It's going to be less aggressive. Now, one cool thing that you get with this, and I'm going to stay right here for now, is going to be the source mix. So right now I'm using 100% LFO. If I go up, it's going to be a mix of LFO and the noise. Notice that the filter gets a little bit noisy. If I go all the way to noise, the noise is modulating the cutoff. And maybe you're thinking, why noise? Well, it's because it's a messy sound and it's an unpredictable sound. So you're gonna get this, muddy type of movement. You can use a combination of both. Now, I'm gonna be staying right here in the filter, and now we need to discuss the LFO. On the LFO, you have very simple controls. You need to change your rate, which is gonna be in hertz, super fast or super slow. Also, you can combine different waveforms. You can use a saw or a triangle in combination, or you can use the pulse, which is kind of an on and off type of deal. But again, you can enable all of them just to get a different combination of modulation. Also, you can sync, and when you click it, all the Arturia synthesizers can do this. You can do in hertz, which is by default what we're doing, but when you do sync, you can sync it to the DAW tempo. Also, you can do triplets and you can do dotted. All right. Now, one cool thing from the synthesizer, I'm going to be using the triangle because it's just smooth. I'm doing the filter, but also you can do the pulse width modulation if you're using the number 1 in this case, and I'm going to use the number 2, and maybe go down in semitones just to get something cool, and I'm going to remove the sync for now. So I'm doing, different sources at the same time. Maybe I want to do a little bit of modulation on the number 2, so you can do it. And you maybe blend a little bit of noise, and if you want to go nuts, you do more. So this is how the LFO and how the wheel mod works in terms of modulation in the synthesizer. Another thing is going to be, let me just, I'm going to go back to defaults. The other thing that you can do in terms of modulation is the polymod. So this has the same idea. You have a source, which is SRC, and then you have a destination. If you think about this, with the wheel mod, the source is our LFO, and the destination is whatever we select right here. The destination can only be a couple of things. You have frequency, pulse width modulation, and filter. Now, the thing is that what changes right here really is going to be the source. You can use the filter envelope, which is something that we cannot do right here at the bottom. You can use this envelope to do some modulation, or you can use the oscillator 2. Remember that we discussed previously that the oscillator 2 can be turned into an LFO. Well, this is the way we turn it on and we use it as an LFO. First, I'm going to show you the filter amount, the envelope. If I play something, nothing happens, but in this case, I'm going to disregard the envelope for this. Now, you don't need to do this, but I'm just doing it just to show you. And what I want to do is that with the filter envelope, I want to modulate maybe, I don't know, the filter, which is a little bit redundant because we already do this with the envelope right here. But you can do a little bit right here and then offset it with whatever you do right here. Now, in this case, I'm going to go all the way down to the filter, but I'm going to be going to maybe the frequency. So now, if I maybe open the filter a little bit more, this filter is going to modulate the pitch of the oscillator number 1. And if I play it, notice that we get that type of slide or glide. If I do less, it's going to be like that. Now, the envelopes are kind of fast, so I'm going to be doing it, I'm going to just make them smaller, just slower. And now when I play a key, it's going to take a certain amount of time to get up in pitch. Alright, so that's what you can do. You just use the envelope to modulate the frequency. You can also do pulse width modulation for the oscillator number 1. And then we have the oscillator number 2. And I'm going to go all the way up on the oscillator number 2. And right now, I'm modulating the cutoff of the filter. So if I play it, notice how it sounds. I'm not using the envelope. If I turn this off, it sounds like this. So the oscillator number 2 is being used to modulate the cutoff. If I change the frequency, it's going to start going faster and faster, and we get a different type of modulation. Whatever it is that we do right here with the oscillator is going to change the modulation. Now, I'm not using it as an LFO. I'm using the sound, the waveform that comes out of the oscillator number 2. You're, still getting something cool. But if you want to use it as an LFO, you just enable LFO, and now it just works like an LFO. Up in semitones to go faster, or if you want to go slower, you go down. And everything else we discussed, for example, like the pulse width, it's going to make the modulation very short. Because it's a pulse width, it's a short pulse. If I want to use the saw, we can. Alright, so again, it's like using the LFO right here, but we are using the oscillator, pretty much. So we are done with the modulation. This is what the synthesizer can do. Of course, this is good, but maybe on a more modern synthesizer, back in the day it was cool, it was awesome. But nowadays, it's just lacking the destinations and sources. Now, all of this is going to be on the Advanced tab. The Advanced is really crazy. You can do crazy things that you cannot do from the main synthesizer. We're going to talk about that in a minute. Alright, so now we need to talk about a few more things that make this synthesizer very interesting. You have the glide with the legato, the unison with the detone. If you click here, you have the voice dispersion, and then at the bottom, you have the different options for the play modes. First, I'm going to start with unison because it's the easiest of them all, and I'm using, again, a default patch. So when you enable unison, you can only play mono. You cannot play poly. So if I play a chord, not gonna happen, right? So I'm just getting one single note. Now, the main point of unison is that when you play a key, it's going to stack different voices, a lot of voices, on top of each other. And the trick is that if you detune the voices, you're gonna get the big sound. If you don't detune them, how I'm doing, which is just what I'm doing right now, and you can only go to 0.5, so there is some detuning. But we have a more phasey sound, because all the voices that are playing the same thing when I play a key are just, closer. As you start to separate the pitch of the voices, you get this interaction and the big sound. And if you keep going up, you get into the beehive territory. So this is how unison works. Now, at the bottom, you have more options. When unison is on, poly goes off. And it makes sense because it's mono, but you can play only one single key at a time. But you can decide how many voices you want to stack. In the case of the default preset, you can do by default 5 voices. The thing is that when you use unison, if you stack 8 voices, it's gonna sound super big. Super big. And on top of that, you're using, more CPU power, but, in this case, doesn't matter. But if you want, you can do maybe just 2 voices. And it's going to sound a little bit smaller. But maybe this is, what you want. Maybe just 8 voices or 5 is just a little bit too much. But you can choose right here how many voices you want to stack to do the unison. All right. Alright, so I'm going to go back to a default patch, and the voice dispersion, what it is trying to emulate a vintage gear. Of course, this is a plugin, it's digital, so it can be always perfect. All the voices, the filters, everything is just super perfect. Since this is an emulation, the voice dispersion gives you different profiles to offset the oscillators, the pitch, the frequencies, and everything else. Because in a hardware synthesizer, not everything is the same. All the different voices are going to be a little bit different from each other. Maybe the filters are not going to be exactly the same. So, maybe especially the envelopes are not going to be exactly the same. So you have the first one, which is the default one, right? Is what they emulated. But as you go up, you get different profiles. And notice that right here, it decides how you can offset the pitch, the pulse width modulation level, the filters, resonance, and envelope, and then the mod. So as I keep going up, notice that we get a tiny little change, especially in pitch. And custom, it means that you can choose your own custom. I'm going to go to the 3, and I'm maybe going to be doing a little bit of cutoff, a little bit of resonance, and I'm going to play a chord. And if I go to the 1, notice it sounds a little bit better. If I go to 3, It's just a little bit more offset. Now, if I go to custom and I go to crazy on all of this amount, all of this controls, it's gonna sound like the hardware, like the synth needs a little bit of maintenance. Yeah. And if I go to 1, it's just, it sounds good. Now, this all depends on what you want to do. If you want to make it more analog, well, then go to custom and just fine-tune these controls. I'm going to close this, and when we are not, and back to a default patch, when we are not in Unison, you have the poly, which is going to be the play modes. You can go to mono, right? If you do mono when I play a chord, not going to happen. We just get one single one, and you can decide if you want to do mono legato or you want the amount of polyphony. In this case, you can go up to 16, so it means that you can play 16 different keys and you can get it. But maybe you want to play maybe 4 keys or maybe 2 keys. I'm going to go to 2. And if I play 1, that's going to work. If I play 2, that's going to work. Or maybe I'm going to do this. And if I play a new one, it's just not going to work. It's removing or stealing one of the voices. You can only do 2 keys at once. But again, this is completely up to you. If you want a poly of 8, you can play 8 keys, and so on, and so on, and so on. Before we move on to the next section, which is the arpeggiator, I need to show you what the glide and the legato is, if you don't know what it is. So when I go up on this control, what this will do, it will make the frequency glide. Now this is a very common type of effect. I play a key, it's going to glide or slide, and I'm going to make it slower to that key. If I play a new key, it's going to glide or slide to that key every time we play a key. It makes sense, right? If you go super slow, it means that the transition from point A to point B is going to be slow. Right. So you can do very small amounts and just get the cool sound. Right. Now, if I go to legato, this is completely different. Right now, I'm going to turn it off. Right now, if I play a key, we get that glide. And I'm not holding a key. I'm just playing different keys. Now, if I enable legato, this means that if I want that slide or glide effect, I need to hold a key. If I play a key, that is, I'm not getting it. And I'm going to go to glide, to a more obvious type of glide. I'm not getting it, right? It's because the legato is on. How this works is that if I hold a key and then play a new key, then and only then it's going to glide. And it's because I'm holding a key. Alright, so the next thing, so we can finish with pretty much the whole panel that we have right here, is going to be the hold, the chords, and the arpeggiator. Now the hold, if you just select it, if you play a key, it's just going to hold it for you. That's pretty much it. If I play a chord, it's going to hold it for you. That's it. If you turn it off, it's just going to forget about it. Then you have the chord, which is something that you get on all the Arturia synthesizers. When I enable this, you can play one single key. It's going to play a chord. The thing is that you need to, do something. Right now it's in custom. If I go to octaves, it means that when I play a key, it's going to play that key, and I'm playing a C. It's going to play that key and one key up because it's octave. We can go to fifths, suspended, minor, minor 7. And this means that when I play a key, I'm playing single keys. I'm not playing chords. Is going to do whatever you have right here. Now you have minors 9s, then 11s, and so on and so on and so on. Now the thing is that you can go to custom and say, okay, every time I play a key, I want this, I want all of this. And now if I play it, we get it. And if we play a different key, I'm playing a C, it's going to transpose it to whatever key is that we are playing. Alright, so this is how the chord works. I'm going to close it and disable it. And if I go right here, you have the arpeggiator. The arpeggiator, it's way easy. Just pretty simple. I'm going to maybe go down to the cutoff. And if I play a key or chord, nothing happens. Now, if I enable the arpeggiator, we get that arp. Just like with any arpeggiator, you have different patterns. You have the up, which is up. If you go to down, now it's going to be down. You can go up and down. Order, it's called as played. So if I play a key, it's going to arpeggiate it. If I play a different key, and if I play another one, it's going to remember the order of the keys that we played. And it's going to use that as an instruction to do the arpeggio. That's why it's called order. Then you have the random. If I play a chord, it's just going to be using random to do the arpeggio. Now then you have the other most common, I'm going to go to up, the other most common control on an arpeggiator, which is going to be the octave. If I play a chord, it's doing it. If I go to octave 2, it's going to repeat the triad I'm playing on this octave and on the next one. If I do 3, it's going to do this octave, the next one, and then the next one. And if I do 4, it's just going to do it the same. It's going to do 4 octaves up. If I go to down, it's the same thing, but, a different motion. Alright. The other thing that you get is going to be the rate, and I guess this one is pretty self-explanatory. You go up, it's going to go faster. You go down, it's going to go slower. You can't sync it to your DAW tempo. Again, super obvious. Now, one thing that it's not so obvious is the repeat. If I go here, it's going to say repeat and then gate. Now, gate, again, is another very common control that you get on all the synthesizers. Now, I'm going to go to 2. When I go to 2 and I keep the gate 100%, it sounds like we are using subdivisions, or we are changing the resolution of whatever it is that we are using right here. If I go to 3, it's going to be even more obvious. Go to 4, even more obvious. Now this is because the gate is all the way on 100%. If I go down on the gate, what it does is going to repeat every single key I'm playing. In this case, I'm playing a triad, a 1, 2, 3. If I 1, 3, 5 actually. So if I go to 2, it's going to repeat 1, 1, 3, 3, 5, 5. Go to 3, it's going to be 1, 1, 1, 3, 3, 3, 5, 5, 5. If I go slower, it's just going to be a little bit more obvious. And again, if you go to 4, it's going to be the same. Alright, so this is what the repeat does. And the gate, if you go all the way down, it's just super short. Alright, so this is how the arpeggiator works. It's a pretty simple arpeggiator. I guess, you just don't need much. If you want a different arpeggiator, maybe try Pigments. That one is super cool. Alright, so I'm gonna stand on a default patch, and now we need to discuss the advanced section. If I click right here at the top, we are into the advanced, and we have modulations, then we have keyboard, and then we have effects. Now, the effects are pretty simple. You can run the effects in parallel, and then you're going to blend them at the end, or you can run them in serial. A serial means that, like daisy chaining pedals, right? You go to a delay, then you go to a reverb, and the sound of the delay will go into the reverb. So, yeah, this is what serial means. And you have a lot of different effects, and I mean a lot, and they are just very cool. I'm not going to go through all the effects because that would be just crazy. So I'm going to stand right here and maybe do a little bit of chorus and a little bit of reverb, just to get something, something a little bit better. So if I play a chord, it's going to sound like that. I'm going to go down at the cutoff and just keep it there. So again, it sounds a little bit better. And the most challenging part of the advanced section is going to be the modulations. You have an LFO 2. Right, this is the one at the bottom, and then you have a function, which is, again, an envelope. I'm going to go first to the LFO 2. So this works just like the one we have at the bottom. You have the source, which is the LFO 2, and then you choose a destination. You can choose up to 2 destinations. In this case, I'm going to be going down to the cutoff, and I want to maybe show you how it works by modulating the filter cutoff. So whatever we are doing right here is going to modulate the cutoff, just like the LFO. So if I play it, nothing is going to happen, because we need to provide some amount. If I go up, it's going to start doing it. Notice that this is super slow. Goes up, the filter cutoff and then goes down. Now right there at the left, you have the rate. And you can, of course, go to hertz, you can sync it, triplets, and dot it, just like before. If I keep going up, it's gonna go faster. And faster and faster. Cool. I'm gonna keep it there. The other thing, most important thing, is gonna be the amplitude. Right now, it's super aggressive. I can go down, and it means that the amplitude of this waveform is gonna be smaller. So the modulation is gonna be a little bit more, it's gonna be less, right? Aggressive, smooth. I'm gonna keep it all the way up. The other cool thing is that you can go into negatives. Depending on what is the waveform, you're gonna really notice the difference. And you can use a second destination if you wanted to. Now in this case, I'm gonna, not do it. Then you have the waveforms, and as you could guess, you have different waveforms like a triangle, a sine wave, a saw, a ramp up, and a square, which is an on and off type of deal. And then you have the sample and hold. It says right here, sample and hold, which is a random. And the other one is going to be a smooth samp. Now this is the same as sample and hold. The difference is that when I go to sample and hold, the changes, the random, it's just pretty aggressive. This one is going to smooth the changes, and the randomness is going to be a little bit more smoother. All right, so still, I'm gonna go to the sine wave. So the most complicated, I wouldn't say complicated, is the most confusing options are right here at the top. First, if you're standing on LFO, well, you just get that LFO. Right now, with this modulation, we are going up. Let's say that we start on 4. It's going up and it's going down below 4, up and down. And it's because this instruction is bipolar, right? It goes to positives, it goes to negatives. If I make it unipolar, now notice that the background changes. It goes up and then goes down. Now it will only go up and then go back to the original position. So now, for example, if you start on 4, it's going to go up, do the motion, and then go down to 4. It will never go into negatives because it's unipolar. So if I play it, we can hear it, it's going only up. If I go bipolar, it's going up and down. Another cool thing that you get with this one is going to be the phase. So I'm going to go to unipolar. Why not? Right now, when we start doing the modulation, we start at the 0 crossing point, right? We start maybe right here. But maybe, what if you want to start maybe from a different position of your waveform? So you can adjust or adjust the phase. So now, it's just going to be starting right here at the top. The issue with this is that now we are using this LFO as a constant motion, and it's this option that you have right here. It says LFO, and I'm not playing anything, and the LFO constantly moves without stopping. And this works just like the default LFO that you have on the synthesizer. Now you have other options. For example, you have the envelope. And the envelope, it means that the LFO, and for now I'm going to restart the phase, go back to 0. The LFO will start when I play a key, and not before. Right now it's super fast. I'm going to go a little bit slower so you can see it. I'm going to be playing a key in 3, 2, 1. And then, and only then, the LFO will start. But it will not go back to the beginning and do it again. It's going to finish right here. If I even go slower. And now the phase really matters because it starts right here. I mean the modulation. Maybe we can offset it by some amount, and now it's going to start at the bottom and then go up and then go down. So this is why you get the phase. You can choose where it starts and where it ends. So this is why we adjust the phase. You can choose where it starts or when it ends. The other option is going to be the LFO retrigger. Right now is going to be an LFO, just like the one we have right here, is constantly going. And I'm going to go a little bit faster. And if I play a key, notice that now something happens. It's doing the LFO, of course. It's just doing it. But when I play a new key, it will always restart from the beginning. Right here. The old LFO doesn't care that we are playing a new key. It just keeps going and going and going. It's not restarting or retriggering. The LFO retrigger, it means that when we play a new key, it will always start from the beginning. If I go to slow and starts, I play a new key, starts from the beginning. Play a new key from the beginning, 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 beginning. So this is how these options work right here at the top. Then you have the other option, which is the polyphonic. Of course, this is a polyphonic instrument, so you can do a polyphonic type of envelope or retrigger. You don't get it for the LFO. Okay, so let me show you how this works because it's a little bit confusing. Right now, if I'm gonna remove the filter cutoff, and I'm gonna be going just to the oscillators. And I'm going to go to the frequency. It's going to sound a little bit weird, but you're going to get the idea of how this works. If I play a frequency, it's modulating the frequency up and down. And, we know. What happens if I play a new key while I'm holding this one? If I play it, both voices, both keys are going to be moving or grooving along with the LFO. I play a new key, everything moves the same fashion. I'm playing 4 keys now. I play 5, 6. All the keys, all the tones are grooving along with this LFO. Now, the other way to do this is with a polyphonic. This means that each voice will groove to its own LFO. And it means that when you play a key, it will re-trigger, right, on each voice. And if I play a new key after a couple of seconds, the LFO is going to start from its own position. So you have independent LFOs for each different voices. And now, since you have a lot of different LFOs going in different directions, the sound can be a little bit different and do the same thing. I'm going to be playing one single voice, one single key. We have one voice, so there's no problem. I'm going to play a new key. And notice that now the frequencies, they move in different directions. I play a new key. Third, I'm playing 3. A new one. A new one. And I'm playing 6. So all the different voices are going in different directions. And this is what the LFO retrigger and the envelope polyphonic means. All the voices, they have their own version of the envelope and the LFO retrigger. And alright, so then you have the function. And I'm going to go back to a default patch. It works pretty much the same way. You have your rate right here. You have your amplitude, which is, if it's too aggressive, you can narrow it down. And then you choose your destination. In this case, I'm going to do the same thing than before, the filter cutoff. I'm going to do some filtering. And since I started with the default patch, I'm going to be doing some effects. So it's going to sound like that. I'm going to go back to modulations. Now, instead of using an LFO, which is a fixed waveform, what we get is we can draw our own type of, instruction. By doing right-click, you can delete all the different points. Or at least, you need 2. But the cool thing is that here you can choose or create your own waveform. You can add a curve, exponential, logarithmic, or just go linear. And then, whatever it is that you do right here, you're going to be using it as a modulation source. So let's say I want to do something, maybe something like this. So now I'm going to be going to the filter cutoff. I'm going to be modulating this in some fashion. And if I play a key, it goes down, goes up, goes down, up, down, and goes down. So yeah, it's pretty much the same as the LFO. All the different functions that you have right here are pretty much the same. The unipolar, the LFO retrigger, and the envelope. It works exactly the same. The only difference is that you have presets. You can make it go back to nothing, or maybe get the shape, you get a triangle, and the most common ones, square. And if you keep moving, you have a lot more. And these ones are a little bit more, I wouldn't say useful, but they're cool. Depending on what you want to do, of course. If you want that effect, well, this is going to give you that effect. Alright, so again, this is how it works. So I'm going to go back to linear, and you have more options. If you create different points, this is going to position you on that point. I guess it's pretty self-explanatory. If I stand at this point, the level is going to change the level. The time is going to be when it starts. If I move it, right, we can see it moving. And then you have the draw mode. This one is super interesting. Right now, we have the free. So free means that whatever I do, it's going to go and do it. And then you have other options, for example, like the steps. If I grab the pencil, it's going to do steps, right? Then the other option is going to be the ramp up, which is pretty much the same thing, but with a ramp. So if I play it, you can get that effect. And the other one is going to be the ramp down, so it's the opposite. All right. So not so hard after you understand how this works. And this gives you a lot of different types of modulations, something that you cannot do, of course, with the hardware. Now I'm going to go back to default, and now we need to go to the other type of modulation, which is the keyboard modulation. And just like we did before, I'm going to be doing some chorus and some reverb. All right, so if I go to keyboard, every time I do something on my keyboard, is going to give me some kind of information. Now my keyboard is all the way full on velocity. I'm gonna change it, and notice that if I play with different velocities, this instruction changes, letting you know where that velocity is when you play the keys. So this could be a modulation. If I go to the destination and go to cutoff, when I play the keys, the velocity is going to influence the cutoff. If I play very soft, the cutoff is going to be dark. It's not even moving it. If I play it hard, the cutoff is opening a lot more. And this is how it works. You just target. If you want to use the velocity, if you want aftertouch, for example, I could go to the cutoff, do a little bit of cutoff, a little bit of resonance as well, just a tiny little bit. And my keyboard right now has aftertouch. So if I play it and I use that aftertouch by doing pressure on my keys, I'm able to modulate the cutoff and the resonance. Now, of course, you need a keyboard that can do aftertouch, right? Then you have the modulation wheel. I feel like I don't need to explain it. It's the modulation wheel on your MIDI controller. And then you have the keyboard tracking, which is the same thing that we have right here. If I go up on the keys, I play higher keys, it's going to tell me, dude, you're right there. And each time I play a frequency with my keyboard, the instruction is going to be different, so the modulation will be different, lower or higher. Now, on all of these ones, you can draw your own envelope, or you can just modify it. For example, I'm going to go to aftertouch. I know I can do this. And right now, it's linear, just linear. But what I can do, I can add a tiny little curve, or maybe just break it. And now when I do aftertouch and I'm not being too aggressive, nothing will happen. But when I'm really aggressive, it will do the modulation. Or maybe when I do the opposite. When I'm doing a little bit, it's going to be aggressive. And then maybe when I'm going hard, it's going to be getting me a curve. Soft, aggressive. So yeah, you can draw your own type of envelope right here. And again, this expands everything that you can do in terms of modulation with this synthesizer. And I'm glad that we got this update. This is the 5V at this point in time. The previous version of this synthesizer was great, but the modulation and the effects was just, it needed an upgrade. And we got it, right? So we have the effects. You can use a lot of effects, chain them in whatever fashion you want. And then the modulation is just, way different, much better. And the keyboard is essential. And that's it. So hopefully you learned something on this one. And if you like this, please like and subscribe. This channel is supported by viewers only. If you want to buy me a coffee, just say thanks and help the channel keep going on. You can. You have links in the description for PayPal, YouTube Thanks, and Patreon. Thanks for watching and see you on the next one.